The grand ballroom of the Plaza Hotel in New York City was filled with Manhattan's most powerful elite. Crystal chandeliers cast golden light over designer gowns and tailored suits. Champagne flowed like water, and the air buzzed with whispered deals worth millions. Elena Rodriguez stood near the entrance, her heart pounding against her ribcage like a caged bird fighting for freedom. She hadn't expected to see him here, not tonight, not like this. Brad Sterling, her ex-husband, the man who had destroyed her 5 years ago. He stood across the room with his arm wrapped possessively around a tall, blonde woman dripping in diamonds, his new wife, the same woman he had been sleeping with throughout their entire marriage. Elena's fingers tightened around her champagne flute. She could leave. She should leave. But her feet remained rooted to the marble floor. That's when Brad's eyes found hers. For a moment, time stopped. Recognition flickered across his handsome face, followed by something Elena couldn't quite read. Surprise, confusion, and then his lips curved into that familiar smirk, the one that used to make her heart flutter. Now it only made her blood run cold. He whispered something to his wife before making his way towards Elena, his stride confident and predatory. "Well, well, well," Brad drawled as he approached, his eyes scanning her simple black dress. "Elena Rodriguez. Or should I say Elena the housekeeper?" Elena's jaw tightened. "Excuse me." Brad laughed, the sound sharp and cruel. He grabbed her arm and pulled her toward a group of businessmen nearby. His grip was too tight, bruising, just like old times. "Gentlemen," Brad announced loudly, drawing attention from everyone within earshot. "Allow me to introduce you to someone special. This is Elena. She used to be my wife, if you can believe it." He paused for dramatic effect. "But don't worry, she found her true calling. Hooray. She's a maid now, isn't that right, sweetheart?" Laughter rippled through the group. Elena felt heat rush to her face. Her heart screamed at her to fight back, to tell them the truth. But something held her back. A quiet voice in her head that whispered, "Wait." "I always knew you'd end up where you belong," Brad continued, his voice dripping with condescension. "Cleaning up after real people? People who actually matter?" His wife, Tiffany, appeared beside him, her lips twisted in a cruel smile. "Is this her? The Latina you told me about? She looks like she belongs in the kitchen." She looked Elena up and down like she was inspecting livestock. "I can see why you traded up." More laughter, more humiliation. Elena opened her mouth to respond when a deep voice cut through the crowd like a blade through silk. "Is there a problem here?" The laughter died instantly. Every head turned toward the source of that voice, and Elena watched as the color drained from Brad's face. A man emerged from the crowd. He was tall, over 6', with broad shoulders that strained against his perfectly tailored black suit. His dark hair was swept back from a face that could have been carved from marble. Cold, beautiful, and absolutely deadly. A thin scar traced along his jawline, adding an edge of danger to his devastating looks. But it was his eyes that made people step back. They were black as midnight and twice as unforgiving. Alessandro Moretti, the Wolf of New York, the most feared MAFIA Don on the East Coast. And he was walking straight towards Elena. Now, before we continue with this story, if you're new here, make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. Trust me, you don't want to miss what happens next. This story is about to get intense. The crowd parted like the Red Sea as Alessandro approached. His gaze never left Elena's face, and when he reached her, he did something that made everyone gasp. He wrapped his arm around her waist and pulled her close, pressing a soft kiss to her temple. "You," he murmured against her skin. "I've been looking everywhere for you." Brad's mouth fell open. His champagne glass slipped from his fingers, shattering against the marble floor. "What? What is this?" Brad stammered. Alessandro finally turned his attention to Brad, and the temperature in the room seemed to drop by 10 degrees. "I'm sorry. Do I know you?" "I'm Brad Sterling, Sterling Enterprises. We were supposed to meet tonight to discuss the construction deal." Alessandro's lips curved into a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Ah, yes. Brad Sterling, the one who's been begging for a meeting with me for 6 months." His arm tightened around Elena. "Tell me, Mr. Sterling, why were you touching my wife?" The word hit the room like a bomb. Wife. Tiffany's diamond-encrusted clutch hit the floor, her perfectly made-up face contorted with shock and something darker. Jealousy. "Your wife?" Brad laughed nervously. "That's impossible. She's just a maid. She's nobody." Alessandro's expression didn't change, but something shifted in his eyes. Something dangerous. "She's nobody," he repeated softly. "This woman standing beside me is Elena Moretti, my wife, the love of my life, the mother of my children. And you stand here in my city at my event, calling her nobody." Elena felt Alessandro's fingers trace gentle circles on her hip, a silent reassurance. She leaned into him, drawing strength from his presence. "I didn't know." Brad backpedaled quickly. "I swear I had no idea. She was just... I thought..." "You thought you could humiliate her," Alessandro finished. "You thought you could put your hands on her? You thought because she was once yours, you could treat her like trash." He stepped forward, and Brad stumbled backward. "Let me make something very clear, Mr. Sterling." Alessandro's voice was barely above a whisper, but everyone in the vicinity heard every word. "Whatever claim you think you had on her is dead. Whatever history you share means nothing. She is mine now, and I protect what is mine." He snapped his fingers, and 2 men in black suits appeared from nowhere, flanking Brad on either side. "The construction deal is off," Alessandro announced. "Sterling Enterprises will find no partners in New York. Not now, not ever." He tilted his head, studying Brad's terrified face. "I suggest you leave my city within the next 24 hours. After that, well, let's just say the consequences will be unpleasant." "You can't do this," Brad protested weakly. "I have contracts, agreements." "I own this city," Alessandro replied simply. "I can do whatever I want." He turned his back on Brad, dismissing him entirely, and focused all his attention on Elena. "Are you all right?" he asked softly, his cold demeanor melting into genuine concern. Elena nodded, though her heart was still racing. "I'm fine. I didn't expect to see him here." Alessandro cupped her face in his hands, his thumbs brushing away tears. She hadn't realized she was crying. "He will never hurt you again. I promise you that." Behind them, Brad was being escorted out by Alessandro's men. Tiffany scrambled after them, her designer heels clicking frantically against the floor. But the night was far from over. As the commotion died down and the guests returned to their champagne and gossip, an older woman approached Alessandro and Elena. She was elegant, dressed in a vintage Chanel suit with silver hair swept into a perfect bun. Alessandro stiffened beside Elena. "Mama," he said, his voice neutral. Isabella Moretti, the matriarch of the Moretti crime family, looked at Elena with undisguised contempt. "So this is the woman who has bewitched my son," she said in Italian. "We speak English in front of my wife," Alessandro replied coldly. "She is learning Italian, but out of respect." "Respect?" Isabella laughed bitterly. "You speak to me of respect while parading this outsider around as if she belongs here." Elena felt her stomach drop. She had known Alessandro's mother disapproved of her, but hearing it so openly, so cruelly, still stung. I will not have this conversation here, Alessandro said firmly. If you wish to discuss my marriage, you can make an appointment with my secretary. Isabella's eyes flashed. You would treat your own mother like a business associate? I would treat her like anyone else who disrespects my wife. He took Elena's hand. Come, amore, we're leaving. As they walked toward the exit, Isabella's voice followed them. This isn't over, Alessandro. That woman will destroy everything our family has built. Alessandro didn't look back. The ride back to their estate was quiet. Alessandro's Rolls-Royce glided through the streets of Manhattan, the city lights blurring past the tinted windows. Elena stared at her reflection in the glass, her mind replaying the events of the evening. You're thinking too loud, Alessandro said softly. She turned to find him watching her, his expression unreadable. How did you know? She asked. Know what? That I needed you tonight. In that moment with Brad, Alessandro reached over and took her hand, intertwining their fingers. I always know. I had my men watching you all evening. The moment he touched you, they reported to me. His jaw tightened. I almost killed him right there. But you didn't. Only because you wouldn't have wanted that. He brought her hand to his lips and kissed her knuckles. Though I reserve the right to change my mind. Despite everything, Elena found herself smiling. You're ridiculous. I'm in love, he corrected. There's a difference. The car pulled through the gates of the Moretti estate, a sprawling mansion hidden behind walls of stone and security on Long Island. It had taken Elena months to get used to living like this. The servants, the guards, the constant reminder that her husband was one of the most dangerous men in America. But beneath all that darkness, she had found something unexpected, something beautiful. She had found home. As they entered the house, they were greeted by two small voices shrieking with excitement. Daddy! Two twin tornadoes came running down the hallway, Leo and Mia, their 4-year-old children. Mia had her father's dark hair and her mother's warm olive skin. Leo was a perfect blend of both, with curly black hair and his father's intense eyes. Alessandro scooped them both up, one in each arm, his entire demeanor transforming. The cold MAFIA boss disappeared, replaced by a devoted father who would burn down the world for his children. Were you good for Nonna tonight? He asked. Nonna let us eat ice cream, Mia announced proudly. 3 bowls, Leo added. Alessandro shot a look at the nanny, Mrs. Esposito, who shrugged helplessly. They have very persuasive eyes, she said. Elena laughed, the tension of the evening finally melting away. This was what mattered. This was what Brad could never take from her. After putting the twins to bed, Alessandro found Elena on the balcony of their bedroom, staring at the moon. He wrapped his arms around her from behind, resting his chin on her shoulder. Tell me what you're thinking, he murmured. Elena sighed. I'm thinking about how different my life is now. 5 years ago, I had nothing. Brad took everything from me. My dignity, my self-worth, my home. He left me with nothing but divorce papers and a bus ticket back to the Bronx. She turned in his arms, facing him. And now I'm here, married to you, mother to our children, living in a mansion in New York. It doesn't feel real sometimes. Alessandro tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. It's real. I'm real. And I will spend every day for the rest of my life proving to you that you deserve every bit of this happiness. Why? The question slipped out before she could stop it. Why me? You could have anyone, any woman in New York would kill to be with you. Alessandro's expression softened. Do you want to know why I fell in love with you? Elena nodded. Do you remember the day we met? How could she forget? It had been 3 years ago. Elena was working at a small diner in Queens, trying to piece her life back together. She had been surviving, barely, living in a tiny apartment and sending what little money she could back to her mother in Florida. One night, a man had stumbled into the diner, bleeding from a wound in his side. He had collapsed at her feet, and instead of calling the police, she had done something stupid, something reckless. She had helped him. She had no idea he was Alessandro Moretti, the most powerful crime lord in the city. She just saw a man who needed help. She had cleaned his wound, hidden him from his enemies, and when he tried to pay her, she had refused. "You saved my life," Alessandro said, pulling her back to the present. "But that's not why I fell in love with you." "Then why?" "Because when I woke up in that storage room, bleeding and vulnerable, I saw something in your eyes that I had never seen from anyone else." He paused. "You weren't afraid of me. You didn't want anything from me. You just cared. A stranger, an outsider. You had every reason to turn me in, and instead you brought me soup and changed my bandages." Elena smiled at the memory. "That soup was terrible." "Worst thing I've ever tasted," he agreed. "But I ate every drop because you made it for me." He pulled her closer, his forehead resting against hers. "That's why I love you, Elena. Not because you're beautiful, though you are. Not because you gave me children, though they are my everything. I love you because you saw me, the real me, and you loved me anyway." Tears streamed down Elena's face. "Alessandro." He kissed her, soft at first, then deeper, more urgent, his hands tangled in her hair as he pulled her against him. "I love you," he whispered against her lips. "I love you more than my own life." Elena pulled back just enough to look into his eyes. "Show me." He didn't need to be told twice. Alessandro lifted her effortlessly, carrying her to their bed. He laid her down gently, reverently, as if she was the most precious thing in the world. And to him she was. He took his time undressing her, worshipping every inch of her body with his lips. When she reached for him, he pinned her hands above her head. "Tonight is about you," he said firmly. "Let me take care of you." And he did, again and again, until she was boneless and breathless and utterly spent. Afterward, they lay tangled together, their heartbeats slowly returning to normal. "Alessandro," Elena murmured sleepily. "Hmm? What are you going to do to Brad?" There was a pause. When Alessandro spoke, his voice was calm. Too calm. "Nothing you need to worry about." Elena lifted her head to look at him. "Alessandro." He sighed. "I'm not going to kill him. I promised you I would never cross that line unless absolutely necessary, but I will destroy him." His eyes hardened. "He humiliated you tonight in public, in front of everyone. He put his hands on you. He called you his maid." A muscle ticked in his jaw. "For that, he will pay. By the time I'm done with him, Sterling Enterprises will be nothing but rubble. He will lose everything, his money, his reputation, his new wife, everything." Elena should have felt sorry for Brad, but after everything he had done to her, she couldn't bring herself to care. "Okay," she said simply. Alessandro's eyes widened slightly. "Okay? Just like that? Just like that." She settled back against his chest. "Some people deserve to face consequences for their actions. Brad is one of them." Alessandro pressed a kiss to the top of her head. "You continue to surprise me, Mrs. Moretti. Get used to it, Mr. Moretti. Now, if you're enjoying this story so far, do me a favor. Hit that like button and drop a comment below telling me what you think is going to happen next. I want to hear your predictions. Also, if you haven't subscribed yet, what are you waiting for? Hit that subscribe button and join our growing family. Now, let's get back to the story. The next morning, Elena woke to chaos. The sound of shouting echoed through the mansion, pulling her from sleep. She reached for Alessandro, but his side of the bed was cold. Wrapping herself in a silk robe, she hurried downstairs to find the foyer in complete disarray. Alessandro stood in the center of the room, still dressed in his sleep clothes, his face thunderous. Before him stood his mother, and beside her was a young woman Elena had never seen before. The woman was stunning, tall, willowy, with porcelain skin and long blonde hair that cascaded down her back like silk. She was dressed in an elegant white dress that probably cost more than Elena's entire wardrobe from before. "What's going on?" Elena asked, descending the stairs. Everyone turned to look at her. Alessandro's expression softened momentarily when he saw her, but it hardened again when he turned back to his mother. "Mama brought a guest," he said tightly. Without permission, Isabella lifted her chin defiantly. "I brought your fiancé." The word hit Elena like a physical blow. "Fiancé," she repeated. The young woman stepped forward, a demure smile on her face. "Hello, I'm Victoria Vance. Alessandro and I were engaged before you came along." Elena looked at Alessandro, waiting for him to deny it, to explain, to do something. He ran a hand through his hair, frustration evident in every line of his body. "Elena, it's not what you think." "Then explain it to me." Alessandro turned to his mother, his voice cold as ice. "You need to leave now and take her with you." "I'm not going anywhere," Isabella declared. "This is my family's estate." "No, it's mine. I am the head of this family, I am the Don, and you will respect my authority or face the consequences." Isabella's face paled, but she held her ground. "You would threaten your own mother?" "I would protect my wife from anyone, even you." The room fell silent. Victoria watched the exchange with calculating eyes, her demure facade slipping for just a moment to reveal something sharper underneath. "Perhaps we should all calm down," Victoria suggested sweetly. "I didn't come here to cause trouble. I just wanted to reconnect with an old friend. We were never friends," Alessandro said flatly. "We were business partners. Our engagement was arranged by our fathers when we were children. I ended it the moment I took control of the family." "But you didn't end it officially," Isabella interjected. "The Vance family still considers the engagement valid. If you don't fulfill your obligation, it could mean war between our families." Elena felt the blood drain from her face. War between crime families because of her. "So that's what this is about," Alessandro said, his voice dangerously quiet. "You're using family politics to try and separate me from my wife." "I'm trying to save this family," Isabella insisted. "That woman is a liability. She's an outsider. She has no understanding of our world, and her ex-husband is a sterling. Do you have any idea how this looks?" "I don't care how it looks." "You should care." Isabella's composure finally cracked. "The Moretti family has survived for 3 generations because we were careful, strategic. We married within our circle. We protected our bloodline, and now you bring this. Choose your next words very carefully, Mama." The threat hung in the air like a guillotine waiting to fall. Isabella pressed her lips together, visibly struggling to contain herself. "I'm leaving," Elena said quietly. Everyone turned to her. Alessandro's expression shifted to panic. "Elena, no, you don't have to." "Not permanently," she clarified. "I just need some air, some time to think." She looked at him with tired eyes. "You need to handle this without me in the room making things worse." "You don't make things worse," he said firmly. "You make everything better." She managed a small smile. "Handle your mother. I'll be in the garden with the twins." She turned and walked away before he could stop her. The garden was peaceful, a stark contrast to the chaos inside. Elena sat on a stone bench while Leo and Mia played on the grass nearby, their laughter filling the air. She watched them run around, their beautiful features a perfect blend of her and Alessandro. They were the reason she stayed, the reason she put up with the disapproval, the danger, the constant tension. They were also the reason she could never let her guard down. They're beautiful children. Elena turned to find Victoria approaching, a gentle smile on her face. Every instinct in Elena's body screamed danger. "Thank you," she said carefully. Victoria sat beside her on the bench, arranging her skirt elegantly. "I hope I didn't upset you earlier. That wasn't my intention." "What was your intention?" Victoria laughed softly. "Direct. I like that." She tilted her head, studying Elena. "I came because Isabella asked me to. She thought my presence might remind Alessandro of his obligations." "And what do you think?" "I think Alessandro is clearly in love with you." Victoria's eyes flickered to the twins. "And I think those children are adorable. I also think you're stronger than anyone gives you credit for." Elena wasn't sure how to respond. "I'm not your enemy, Elena," Victoria continued. "The engagement between Alessandro and me was never romantic. It was purely business. Honestly, I was relieved when he ended it." "Then why are you here?" Victoria's expression turned serious. "Because Isabella is dangerous when she doesn't get her way, and right now she doesn't just want you gone, she wants you destroyed." Elena's blood ran cold. "What do you mean?" "I mean, she's been making calls, reaching out to old allies, people who would do anything to weaken Alessandro's position." Victoria glanced toward the house. "Your ex-husband, Brad, his construction company was struggling long before tonight. Isabella was the one who introduced him to certain opportunities, illegal opportunities. She was building a case against him, yes, but also building connections. Connections to use against you, against your children." Victoria's voice dropped. "She wants to prove that you're unfit, that the twins would be better off with a proper Italian family." Elena's hands trembled. "She wants to take my children?" "She wants Alessandro to come to his senses. And if that means removing you from the equation entirely, she'll do it." Elena stood abruptly, her heart pounding. "Why are you telling me this?" Victoria rose as well, her expression unreadable. "Because I know what it's like to be a pawn in someone else's game. And because I believe in karma." She handed Elena a business card. "If you ever need help, call me. I have resources that even Alessandro doesn't know about." Before Elena could respond, the doors to the garden burst open, and Alessandro strode out, his face dark with fury. "Victoria, leave now!" Victoria offered Elena one last meaningful look before walking away, disappearing into the house. Alessandro reached Elena in 3 long strides, pulling her into his arms. "What did she say to you?" he demanded. "The truth," Elena whispered. "Your mother wants to take our children." Alessandro went completely still. "She what?" "Victoria told me your mother is building a case, trying to prove I'm unfit. She wants to take Leo and Mia." The transformation in Alessandro was terrifying. His eyes went flat, completely devoid of emotion. When he spoke, his voice was barely human. "She will not touch our children, I swear on my life." He released Elena and turned toward the house, his stride purposeful and deadly. "Alessandro, wait." Elena grabbed his arm. "What are you going to do?" He looked down at her, and for the first time since she'd known him, she saw something she'd never seen before. Fear, not for himself, for her, for their children. "I'm going to end this," he said quietly, "once and for all." What followed over the next few weeks was nothing short of a war. Alessandro moved with ruthless efficiency. He cut his mother off from all family finances. He removed her from the estate and relocated her to a modest apartment on the outskirts of Queens. He stripped her of her title within the organization and made it clear to everyone that she no longer spoke for the Moretti family. The elders were shocked. Some were outraged. A few attempted to intervene on Isabella's behalf. They regretted it. One by one, Alessandro dismantled their power bases. He exposed secrets, revoked privileges, and made it abundantly clear that anyone who sided against his wife and children would face the same fate. Within a month, Isabella was isolated and powerless. Her allies had abandoned her. Her schemes had crumbled. She was left with nothing but her bitterness and regret. As for Brad Sterling, his fate was even more satisfying. True to his word, Alessandro destroyed Sterling Enterprises. He bought up their debts, called in favors, and systematically dismantled every business relationship Brad had. The construction deal collapse was just the beginning. Within 6 months, Brad was bankrupt. Tiffany, his diamond-obsessed wife, filed for divorce the moment the money dried up. Brad tried to fight back. He went to the media claiming he was being targeted by the New York Mafia. But somehow evidence of his own crimes began surfacing: tax evasion, fraud, connections to human trafficking operations. He was arrested on a Tuesday morning, cameras flashing as he was led away in handcuffs. Elena watched the news coverage from the comfort of her living room. Leo on one side and Mia on the other. "Mommy, who's that man?" Leo asked, pointing at the screen. Elena smiled. "Nobody important, baby. Nobody at all." 3 months later, life had settled into something resembling normal. Elena was learning Italian now, taking lessons 3 times a week. The twins were thriving in their new preschool, and Alessandro, despite his demanding schedule, never missed dinner with his family. It was on one such evening that Elena decided to share some news. They were sitting in the dining room, the twins already in bed when she took Alessandro's hand across the table. "I need to tell you something." He immediately tensed. "What's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong." She smiled, her eyes bright with unshed tears. "I'm pregnant." Alessandro's mouth fell open. For the first time in his life, the fearsome wolf of New York was completely speechless. "Pregnant?" he finally managed. We're having another baby." He was around the table in an instant, lifting her from her chair and spinning her around. "I love you," he said, kissing her face, her lips, her hair. "I love you so much." Elena laughed through her tears. "I love you too." He sat her down gently, his hands moving to her still flat stomach. "A baby," he whispered in wonder. "Our baby." "I was thinking," Elena said softly, "if it's a girl, we could name her Hope. Because that's what you gave me. Hope for a better life. Hope for love. Hope for happiness." Alessandro's eyes glistened. The most powerful crime lord in New York brought to tears by the thought of his unborn daughter. "Hope," he repeated. "It's perfect." They stood there in the dining room holding each other, dreaming of the future. Neither of them noticed the figure watching from the shadows outside the window or the camera that captured their embrace. The next morning, Elena received a package. Inside was a single photograph of her and Alessandro in the dining room taken the night before. Scrawled across the bottom in red ink were 3 words: "This isn't over." Elena's blood ran cold. She didn't recognize the handwriting. It wasn't Isabella's style, too theatrical, too dramatic, but someone was watching them. Someone with access. Someone with a grudge. She was still staring at the photograph when Alessandro walked in fresh from his morning workout. "Good morning, amore. How are you?" He stopped seeing her face. "What is it?" Wordlessly, she handed him the photograph. Alessandro's expression darkened as he studied it. Then slowly, deliberately, he reached for his phone. "Dominic, gather the men. Now, full lockdown. No one enters or leaves without my authorization." He paused. "And find out who took this picture. I want them in front of me by sundown." He hung up and turned to Elena, his eyes fierce with protective rage. Whoever did this just made the biggest mistake of their life. Elena should have been frightened. She was pregnant, vulnerable, and clearly being targeted. But looking at her husband, seeing the deadly promise in his eyes, she felt something else entirely. She felt safe because Alessandro Moretti would burn down the world before he let anyone hurt her. And God help whoever was stupid enough to try. The investigation moved quickly. Alessandro's men were thorough, ruthless in their pursuit of answers. By that evening, they had a suspect. Elena couldn't believe it when they told her. "It's Tiffany," Alessandro said grimly. "Brad's ex-wife. But why? She divorced him. She got everything she wanted." "Not everything." Alessandro's jaw tightened. "Apparently, she blames you for her downfall. When I destroyed Brad, I destroyed her life as well. She lost her social standing. Her friends abandoned her. Her family disowned her for the embarrassment. So she's targeting me for revenge. She's targeting you because she's delusional." He paced the room. "She's been following you for weeks, documenting your movements. She was planning something bigger, but we caught her before she could act." "Where is she now?" "In my custody." Elena closed her eyes. "What are you going to do with her?" Alessandro was quiet for a long moment. "That depends on you." "On me?" He nodded. "She tried to terrorize my wife, my pregnant wife. By rights, I should make her disappear. It's what anyone in my position would do." Elena's stomach churned. But I made you a promise. I told you I would never cross certain lines unless absolutely necessary, and I want to keep that promise." He looked at her with vulnerable eyes. "So I'm asking you, what do you want me to do?" It was a heavy question, one that carried weight and consequences. Elena thought about everything Tiffany had done. The photograph, the implied threat, the weeks of stalking. She thought about her children, her unborn baby, the life she had built. "I want her to face justice," Elena said finally. "Real justice, not our justice. I want her arrested, tried, and imprisoned. I want her to spend years behind bars knowing that her plan failed, that she didn't break us." Alessandro nodded slowly. "That can be arranged." "And Alessandro?" "Yes?" "I want to see her. Before she goes, I want to look her in the eye and tell her myself." He studied her for a long moment. Then a small smile crossed his face. "You are the most remarkable woman I've ever known." Elena smiled back. "I learned from the best." The next day, Elena walked into a cold gray room where Tiffany sat handcuffed to a metal table. The woman who had once dripped in diamonds now wore prison-issue clothing, her face bare of makeup, her hair tangled and unwashed. She looked up when Elena entered, and for a moment something like fear flickered in her eyes. "Good." Elena sat across from her, calm and composed. "You thought you could scare me?" She began quietly. "You thought a photograph and a threat would be enough to break me?" Tiffany's lip curled. "You don't belong here. You never did. Brad was right about you. Brad is in prison, where you're about to join him." Elena leaned forward. "You could have walked away, Tiffany. You could have taken the divorce settlement and started over. Instead, you chose revenge. And now look at you." "This isn't over," Tiffany hissed. "I have friends, connections. I'll get out. And when I do, you'll what?" Elena cut her off. "Come after me again? Try to hurt my family?" She shook her head. "You don't understand. The man I married would move mountains to protect me. He has already destroyed an empire because someone looked at me wrong. What do you think he'll do if you ever come near my children?" Tiffany's face paled. Elena stood, smoothing down her dress. "This is the last time we'll ever see each other," she said. "When you're sitting in your cell alone and forgotten, remember this moment. Remember that you had a choice, and you chose wrong." She turned and walked out without looking back. 1 year later, the Moretti estate was decorated for a celebration. Paper lanterns hung from the trees. Music filled the air. Laughter echoed across the gardens. It was Hope's first birthday. Elena stood on the terrace, watching her family. Leo and Mia were chasing each other around the fountain. Hope was in Alessandro's arms, her chubby fingers grabbing at his nose, while he pretended to be captured. A hand touched her shoulder. She turned to find Victoria beside her, elegant as ever in a pale blue dress. "Beautiful party," Victoria said. "Thank you for coming." Over the past year, Victoria had become an unexpected ally. More than that, she had become a friend. Her warning about Isabella had saved Elena's family, and that wasn't something easily forgotten. "How is she?" Elena asked. "Isabella?" Victoria's expression softened. "Lonely, bitter, but starting to accept reality." She paused. "She asked about the children the other day. She wants to see them." Elena considered this. "Maybe someday, when she's ready to treat me with respect." "That's fair." They stood in companionable silence, watching the festivities. "You know," Victoria said, "I used to pity you." Elena raised an eyebrow. "Excuse me?" "When I first heard about you, the outsider who married Alessandro, I thought you must be either very brave or very foolish." Victoria smiled. "Now I know you're both." Elena laughed. "I'll take that as a compliment." "It was meant as one." Victoria turned to her. "You've changed things, Elena. Not just for Alessandro, but for all of us. You've shown that love can exist in our world. That family can mean something beyond blood and business." Before Elena could respond, small arms wrapped around her legs. "Mommy, Daddy says it's time for cake." Mia looked up at her with bright, excited eyes. Her father's eyes. Elena scooped her up, kissing her cheek. "Then we better not keep him waiting." She carried her daughter toward the party, toward her husband and children, toward the life she had built from the ashes of her old one. As she approached, Alessandro looked up and smiled. That smile that still made her heart skip a beat, even after all these years. "There you are," he said, pulling her close with one arm while balancing Hope with the other. "Here I am." He pressed a kiss to her forehead. "I love you, Mrs. Moretti." "I love you too, Mr. Moretti." Around them, friends and family cheered as the birthday cake was brought out. Hope's eyes went wide at the flickering candles. Leo and Mia sang the birthday song in a mix of Italian and English. And Elena stood in the center of it all, overwhelmed by gratitude. She had walked through fire to get here. She had survived betrayal, humiliation, and heartbreak. She had faced down enemies and conquered her own fears. And in the end, she had won. Not just a husband, not just children, not just wealth or status or power. She had won herself, her identity, her worth. And that was the greatest victory of all. Later that night, after the guests had left and the children were asleep, Elena found Alessandro on the balcony. He was staring at the moon, lost in thought. "What are you thinking about?" she asked, slipping into his arms. "The future," he said softly. "Our future." "And what does that look like?" He was quiet for a moment. "I've been thinking about getting out." Elena's heart stopped. "Getting out of the business?" "It's not something that can happen overnight, but I've started putting things in motion, transitioning power to trusted lieutenants, legitimizing our holdings." He looked down at her. "I want to be a real father to our children, a real husband to you, not just the wolf of New York." Tears pricked Elena's eyes. "You would do that for us?" I would do anything for you." He kissed her softly. "You showed me there's more to life than power and fear. You gave me something worth protecting, worth living for." Elena pulled back, cupping his face in her hands. "I'm proud of you," she whispered, "and I love you more than you will ever know." Alessandro's eyes glistened. "I love you too. My heart, my home, my everything." They stood there under the stars, holding each other, dreaming of a future filled with peace and love. And somewhere in the distance, a new day was dawning. A day full of hope. Well, that's the end of this story. If you made it this far, I love you. Seriously, you're the reason I keep creating. Now, before you go, make sure you hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. Drop a comment below telling me what you thought of the story. Did you love the revenge? Were you Team Elena from the start? What do you think should happen to Isabella? Let me know. And don't forget to like this video and share it with anyone who loves a good mafia romance story. I'll see you in the next one. Stay blessed.